YouTube? It's Justin, aka Demonic Sweaters, here with a product review today. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Flamma FM10 audio mixer. Now, full disclosure, they did send me this mixer for free, but I am going to still give you my honest opinion on this. I have another piece of Flamma gear that they sent me last year. It's a FX100 guitar processor, which I ended up really liking a lot, and I still use it pretty much every time I record guitar now. That's what I use. So I was really stoked about getting this mixer. I'm thinking I might be able to use this as my new streaming audio device. And the reason why I'm thinking that is because I think this has all the inputs and outputs that I would need for my current setup. So let's go ahead and unbox it first, and we'll take a look at what is inside, and then we'll talk about some of the features, and then I'm gonna hook it up and see how it does. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside the box here. All right, let's take a look here. Now, one thing I really was attracted to right away with this device was the colors. I really like the color scheme on here. It looks really cool. Go ahead and open it up. It feels solid, first impressions. Solid metal chassis here. Looks like plastic on the sides, but it's a really nice looking blue. You can see there, Flamma FM10. So there it is. Now, let's take a look at what some of the inputs and outputs that it actually has here. First off, you get two XLR inputs, which also can take a 1/4 inch input, TRS input. It's got 48 volt phantom power on the first channel here. Then on the second channel, you've got a instrument selection, as well as pads on both. Now, if you don't know what pad means, that's actually basically cuts the signal down by a certain amount of dB in case you have a really hot instrument. You need to lower the signal overall, you just press pad. And actually I find that to be a very useful feature on other mixers, so glad to see that here. I would like to see phantom power on both 1 and 2, but I guess that's good enough, especially if you're using this for, like, you know, YouTube streaming or live stuff like that. Having at least one channel with phantom power is nice. Though maybe it does have on both. I'm not sure, I'll have to test that. Maybe the switch is for both, I don't know. But we'll look in the manual and figure that out. Now we look here, we have mic input, instrument input on 1 and 2, like I said before, and then here down on the switches of these two channels, there's some nice little things there. We have a compressor EQ button on channel 1 and a reverb button, and then on channel 2 we have an amp simulator and a reverb button. So I'm anxious to see what those do. Also here we have 3 and 4 input right here, which takes standard 1/4 inch. Another pad button here, you see that -10 dB, it just says -10 dB instead of saying pad. And then we also have your level right here, and then USB volume, as well as a mix knob. Now this feature, I did take a glance inside of the manual. I actually really like that it has this, and what that is, that's actually something very crucial for me. What this allows you to do is balance your live incoming signal with your USB from the computer signal right here with one knob. So that is a really, really great feature. It also has a loopback function, so you can actually record the sound from the USB that is piped through the mixer. You could record that onto whatever you're recording on your computer, so it's basically like loops the signal back into the recording path. Now here on the right we have a line output left and right, as well as a main output. And then it looks like we have 2 separate levels for those right here, which is also really nice. I like that. And then it looks like we have a headphone level here right below those with a standard 3.5mm headphone jack on that. So that looks pretty cool. Now let's take a look at the back. We have a 5 volt DC USB-C input, and then a USB data input right here, I believe. Let's turn this around so you guys can see that. Phone, it's saying phone or PC goes into this one, and this one's for the power. The one thing I did notice, I was looking in here a minute ago, I'll just set this down, is it comes with, whoops, it comes with several useful cables, one of them being a USB to USB-C right here to connect to your computer, and actually a USB-C to lightning cable, and I like seeing that. That means I can hook this directly up to my iPad, which is really cool. And then we have another USB-C to USB-C. So if you needed to hook this up to either a power brick that has a USB-C type plug on it, or onto a computer that has USB-C input. Now, it does not come with a power brick. I kind of wish that it did, but it doesn't. But I have a lot of those laying around, so it's not a big deal. But you have to supply your own power brick. But it comes with a cable. All right, I went ahead and hooked it up to my computer, just my Windows desktop, and it hooked up just fine. Windows recognized it right away. I'm using Windows 11. And when you hook it up to the computer, you don't need to plug in the power connection. It actually will power right off the USB. You only need to use that if you're using it on mobile, like a iPad or something. I did hook it up to my iPad already just to test, and it does work, but I'll show you a more thorough test of that here in a little bit. But first, what I'm going to do is actually open up OBS on the computer and just demonstrate a couple of the features of the mixer. One being the compressor, the reverb, and the loopback function, as well as this aux in. This is actually running from my iPad, which is right here, and that's running into the aux in. And what else? I've got my headphone output plugged in here, and then I'm running from the main output into a pair of Tannoy PBM 6.5 monitors right there. So let's go ahead and log into OBS and do a little screen capture and see what it looks like and sounds like through there. All right, so here we are with a Windows test, and I know this isn't the greatest camera angle ever, but it's basically just using my webcam, and I'm running through OBS right now. And right now you're just hearing the dry microphone signal without any effects or anything on it. But let's go ahead and turn on the compressor EQ button right here. And actually, once that's on, you can tell that it really improves the quality of the voice. Like if you're, using this for podcasting or streaming or something like that, it's really nice how it evens out the whole tone of the voice and brings up the level and everything, and just kind of makes the whole thing sound pretty good. And right now I am using a condenser microphone. So the 48 volt phantom power is on, and I did check, it only does function on channel 1, 48 volt phantom power. Channel 2 does not have phantom power. Now, another thing that I noticed using this mixer is the peak meters aren't very accurate, at least with Windows. We're going to see how it does on the iPad, but basically it will distort way before that peak meter comes on. And I don't want to turn it up and show you guys because I tried that before in another video and it sounds absolutely terrible and it just would be really harsh to listen to. But take my word for it, if you have this level too high, you get some really bad digital clipping, which, is to be expected if you have your level up too high. But it's unfortunate that the peak LED doesn't seem to be very accurate. And also there's no other type of volume metering whatsoever. So all the volume metering you have to do, on the software itself, which you can do. I can see my level in OBS right now, which actually, if I show you the screen there, test, you can kind of see it there. If you look right in this area, you can see my volume meter right there, or level. But, so yeah, that's the compression sound. And let's go ahead and turn on the reverb. And right there is reverb. And the reverb sounds okay. You don't really get any kind of, adjustments for it or anything like that. But it sounds fairly decent for what it is. Another thing I'm going to show you guys too here in a second is using channel 2 for guitar input. It has this amp modeling feature, which is kind of like the reverb in a way. Let me turn that off. Kind of like the reverb in a way where it doesn't really give you any options as to how it sounds. It's just a clean amp simulator sound, but it does sound pretty good. And it's got a reverb on that channel as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that now. Let me hook up some guitar so you guys can hear how that sounds. All right, I've got the guitar plugged into channel 2 on the mixer, and this is the guitar sound without the amp modeler. Okay, now let me go ahead and turn on the amp modeling, or amp sim. And as you can see, it actually does pretty much sound like an amp. It really beefs up the tone. It sounds pretty nice. I'm not going to sing. So yeah, let's go ahead and check out the reverb. if you were a guitar player, streamer, you know, and just wanted a simple mixer to sing and play live, this actually might do pretty well. You could actually, you know, have your guitar hooked up, or even your effects chain, you know, pedals and stuff plugged into here, then that be your amp going right out to YouTube with a microphone. And it's pretty nice, you know, it's a nice combo. Okay, so that's the guitar. And again, just like with the vocals, you have to be careful with the levels. You definitely don't want to turn up your level too high, or you're going to get some really, really nasty sounding distortion. And again, just like with the vocals, the clip LED is pretty much useless in that regard, at least on Windows. But like I said, we're going to check out on iOS. Maybe it'll be more... See, here's what's weird. When you listen in headphones and you just listen to the direct signal going through the mixer, and you use, basically you turn it to, you can't see where I'm pointing, but you have it set to monitor only so you can hear, you know, what's going into the mixer, and you play and you talk and everything, then the peak LEDs seem to be accurate. If you go up into the red, it distorts in the headphones. However, when you do that same technique on USB, you know, to Windows, then it seems to be much, much more sensitive. Now, this could be a Windows issue, or it just could be that the USB output is much hotter than the analog output on it, which seems to be what that's the case. If you were using it for purely analog, then you wouldn't really run into the issue. But again, like I said, I've only noticed it on Windows, and we'll see here in a little bit on iOS. But first, before I even do that, let's go ahead and show you guys the Loopback feature. So how can I do this? Let's do, I guess I can just play a little bit of a video that I was watching here. I have X files up on my computer screen, and I don't want to play too much because I'll get like a copyright claim on it, but let's see if you guys can see this. Let's go to properties, and where is it? Where is this thing? Here we go. Wow, that's weird. You can't see the actual screen, but that's all right. I'm going to press play on my end. Okay, and now right now the loopback is off, but let me go ahead and turn it on.
Ultimately, the decision is Colonel Belt's. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you think?
So now the loopback is on, and you should be hearing that.
Think Colonel Belt knows more than he's saying? That he lied about his knowledge of us? All
right, now loopback is off.
He might go wrong. On. He's an astronaut himself.
Off. Now, so why would you want something like that? Actually, that can be pretty useful. For one, you can record anything that you're hearing from your computer, and if you're using this on, you know, for like Skype interviews or things like that, you know, streaming or you're podcasting, it's a very easy way to record the other side of the call without having to jump through a bunch of hoops with software and routing things, you know, in software. So that's actually a pretty useful feature to have on the device itself. And maybe I'll see if I can FaceTime somebody when we get on the iPad and see if I can record that too, and we'll see how that does. So let's go ahead and check out, oh, iPad. Speaking of iPad, let's do that. I'm running into the auxiliary input, the 1/8 inch input on the mixer with my iPad, which is right here. So I'm just running out from this cable right here into down there, the mixer, and you can see the little 1/8 inch connection is connected there. So let's go ahead and play a little bit of audio from here and let you guys hear what that sounds like. Just open up GarageBand. See, I had it up too high there. It might have distorted for a minute, but it should be good now. Okay, that was some music just playing out of the iPad going through the mix or aux input on the mixer. So I haven't tried channels 3, 4, 5, and 6 yet. So maybe I should do that. I'll hook up like a synth or something to those, and we'll check out how that sounds. All right, so I've got my Behringer Model D synth hooked up, and it's sitting over there to my left, and the keyboard is right here. I'm just using a MIDI controller. Sorry for the shaky cam. But let's check it out. Now it's plugged into the line, or it's basically in channel 3. Because the Behringer Model D is only mono, but 3 and 4 are essentially the same. You can either do mono if you plug into 3, or if you need stereo, you just plug into both 3 and 4. But right now I'm plugged into 3, so here we go. I mean, there's not a whole lot I need to test here, just to see if it works, basically. And it does. Okay, so that's that, and the only other inputs that I haven't tried are the RCA inputs, but I really don't have anything to plug in there right now, but they're essentially the same as 3 and 4, just 5 and 6 are RCA. But it's just giving you another option of type of equipment that you can connect to the mixer, which is pretty nice. You know, it gives you a lot of connection options. And my webcam's being weird. It gives you a lot of connection options, which is pretty nice. And so now let's do some iPad testing. All right, right now I'm plugged into my iPad and I'm just using the built-in camera app on the iPad and using the microphone plugged into the mixer. You can see that it is plugged in over there. And it seems to be working pretty good. Sounds good. I haven't tested the clipping that I was talking about, so I might as well go ahead and do that here. If it's too excruciating, I'll edit that part out and I'll let you guys know, but I'm going to turn up the gain. Actually, let me turn down the level first. Then I'll start turning up the gain until I get into the red. Test, test, test. Hello, 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 hello. Okay, so I'm touching the red right now. Let's see if that... Test. We'll see if that corresponds with... Let me turn it back down. See if that corresponds with how it sounds in the iPad itself. So let me play back here and I'll check. Okay, so I confirmed that actually the peak LEDs tend to work much better with iOS than they do on Windows. It actually seemed to be pretty accurate. So once the peak LED came on the mixer, then it was clipping on the iPad. Like I said though before, it clipped way earlier on Windows than it did when that clip indicator came on. So maybe most of the testing they did was on iPad or maybe a Mac. I don't know, but that is how it worked with me. So next I want to try to find a way that I can test the loopback recording function on the iPad. So let me go ahead and see what I can think of to do that, and we'll be right back. All right, so right now I'm trying to record, basically doing a screen capture and doing GarageBand at the same time and talking into the microphone. I really don't know if this is working, but let's see. Something new I've been working on. Needs a lot more. There's only basically 2 parts. Alright, I'm going to stop this and see if that works. Alright, that actually worked better than I thought it would. And actually, I didn't even have to use the loopback function. iOS can just record your mic and audio at the same time, even in something like GarageBand, which is pretty amazing. So I guess you really don't even need the loopback function in iOS. Maybe there's some reason why you'd want to use it that I can't think of. But it seems like even in FaceTime, I opened that up, and I was able to get background sound. I couldn't find anybody to call with me right now, so I couldn't really show you guys a video. But it seemed like it was recording, everything, as long as you have your microphone on the screen recorder, that you don't even really need to use the loopback function in iOS. And it sounds really good in iOS, this mixer in general. And what's actually pretty cool is I just switched my cables. I plugged basically my USB cable, data cable, I switched the cable with the iOS cable and plugged it in, or the lightning cable rather, and plugged it into the iPad, and then just took the Windows USB cable and plugged that into the power section of the mixer. So it's a very easy switch over. I just basically switched 2 cables, and then now I'm hooked up to the iPad. And then I was able to run my headphone output from my desktop into the aux input of the mixer. And I don't know if this is making sense, but let me just show you. So now basically the way this is hooked up, is this cable here this is the aux input, is going from the headphone output of my desktop computer down there while I'm plugged directly into the iPad for USB audio. So, you know, basically just reversed how I had it set up before, so I can still have computer audio and iPad audio, and basically vice versa. Like, so it's really nice how flexible this thing is. There's a lot of ways that you can hook it up, and a lot of different things you could do with this mixer. And I think the sound quality is pretty good too, especially for voice. Like, I think it's actually quite nice for the voice. This is like a very cheap condenser microphone. This is called Sunhua. I did a mixer. I did a video on this microphone like years ago when I first got it, and it was pretty inexpensive. But I've always thought it sounded pretty good, but still, it's not like an expensive microphone by any means. It was like $30 or something. So that should give you some indication as to how good this thing actually sounds, which is pretty darn good. All right, let's talk about some of the pros and cons of the Flamma FM10 mixer. Pros, one being the wide variety of inputs that you have. You have XLR, you have TRS quarter inch, you have RCA, you also have 33... You also have 1/8 inch auxiliary input. So they pretty much have you covered for every type of input you could ever possibly need for this thing. The other really, really good thing about it is the sound is actually pretty darn good. I'm pretty happy with the way it sounds, especially for voice. You're still hearing me talking through the device right now. And even with this cheap condenser microphone, I think it sounds clear. It sounds full, like it's got a nice bassy sound. The compressor, the built-in compressor on channel 1 is excellent for voice. The reverb, well, let's talk about that a little bit later. The pads are a nice feature. The 10 dB cuts are a nice feature. 48 volt phantom power is a good feature. The fact that it works on Windows and iOS, and probably Mac too. I didn't check it on my Mac, but I'm assuming it'll work on there if it works on iOS. All of that is very good. And also the 4 individual outputs, or two stereo outputs. This is really nice too, because it gives you basically a line output and a main output, and individual levels for both of them. And that could be useful if you were, you know, basically sending to, say you were using this in a performance situation and you had an on-stage mix, and then you had like a front of house mix. You can individually adjust the volumes for each of those. Or say you're going to a stream, you know, an output to a stream that you don't hear, but then you have your monitor mix. You know, there's a lot of reasons why you'd want those 4 individual outputs. That can be very, very useful. And then having individual volume knobs for both line output and main output, as well as the headphone output. That's also really good. So a lot of positives. The negatives are the clip indicators that don't really seem to be accurate on Windows. The fact that there is no like level indication at all, except for that clip indicator. And so if you're relying on that, it can be a little bit, you know, hard to figure out what your actual volume signal is. Another con I would say is the reverb. You know, it's not that it's a con. I just think it's kind of pointless. I mean, maybe it's okay for the guitar one, but I feel like if they were going to put reverb on there, they should have at least given you a couple of parameters to play with, because it just sort of is on or off. And that doesn't really bother me so much on the compressor and the amp sim, because I think what they chose to give you on those actually sounds pretty good. And you don't, you know, you could also, you know, augment the amp sim sounds with pedals and things like that. All right, so another con, and this is actually a pretty big one, there's no EQ. None of the channels have any EQ knobs on them. There's no high or low or anything like that you can adjust. The channel 1 has the button that says compress EQ/EQ, but it doesn't tell you exactly what it's doing to the EQ, and you don't have any way to adjust it at all. Most other mixers in this price range will give you at least a high and a low adjustment, EQ adjustment. And some of them will even give you a mid and, you know, a mid sweep knob on there as well. However, you know, for me, it's not really a deal breaker, because 99% of the time I never even touch EQs on a mixer. I do all of that, you know, post or on the computer or on the iPad or whatever I'm using. But, you know, if you planned on using this for a live stream and you had like multiple mics, it might be nice to have some type of EQ, you know, per channel, just to give you a little bit of a more of a fine-tuning ability to get the sound the way you want it to sound. But, you know, not too bad. 3 cons, and then you have a lot of really, really good positives about this thing. All right, so that's the Flamma FM10 mixer, and these things run for about $150. I'll post a link down below if you want to pick one up for yourself. Overall, I think it is a good deal. You know, it's not the cheapest mixer on the market, but it's definitely not the most expensive one, and you get a lot of inputs and outputs. The only real flaw that I noticed was the peak indicator on Windows, but did not seem to be an issue on iOS. So, yeah, pretty cool thing. Thanks again to Flamma for sending this to me. I give it a thumbs up, and definitely worth the money. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload new content, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great week.